Okay, this is my second attempt at this video because the first one went way too long. I focused on the face of Christ in Shisaku Endo's Silence, and this is my thesis. As the narrative progresses, Rodriguez's changing understanding of faith and suffering is reflected in the change of his imagined portrait of Christ, from the European image of beauty, encouragement, and strength, to the Japanese fumie image of exhaustion, sorrow, and compassion, which means suffering with. In the beginning of the novel, Rodriguez imagines the face of Christ that's always fascinated him, and it's a picture from a church in Europe, so it's an artistic picture in the European style, and it's a face, he says here, Christ is facing straight out, and his face bears the expression of encouragement it had when he commanded his disciples 3 times, "Feed my lambs, feed my lambs, feed my lambs." It is a face filled with vigor and strength. I feel great love for that face. So at the start of his missionary work, Rodriguez imagines Christ's face full of encouragement, vigor, and strength. Later on, when Rodriguez is wandering in the mountains alone, he looks at his reflection of himself and realizes how different he looks from his imagined face of Christ. He says, "This man none of those artists have seen with his own eyes, yet they portrayed his face, the most pure, the most beautiful, that has claimed the prayers of man and has corresponded with his highest aspirations. No doubt his real face was more beautiful than anything they've envisaged." So he still has this idealized, beautiful portrait of Christ in his head, which is a striking contrast to his own thin and dirty face. Later on, though, there's a change when he's captured. He says here, when he's imagining the face of Christ, that since he had been captured, a different sensation filled his breast when the face of that man rose behind his closed eyelids. Now in the darkness that face seemed close to him. At first it was silent, but pierced him with a glance that was filled with sorrow. And then it seemed to speak to him, "When you suffer, I suffer with you. To the end, I am close to you." So here the face of Christ has changed from this idealized, beautiful, encouraging face to a face that is filled with sorrow. Later on still, when he finally, Rodriguez finally apostatizes and tramples on the fumie, or he's about to trample on the fumie rather, he looks at the face of Christ in the fumie image. In contrast to the European images before, this one was engraved by a Japanese craftsman. He says the face was different from the one which the priest had gazed on so often in Portugal, in Rome, in Goa, and in Macau. It was not a Christ whose face was filled with majesty and glory, neither was it a face made beautiful by endurance of pain, nor was it a face filled with the strength of a will that has repelled temptation. The face of the man who then lay at his feet was sunken and utterly exhausted. At the very end of the novel, Rodriguez says, "My faith in you is different from what it was, but I love you still." Then, as always, happened at night, the face of Christ rose up in his heart. It was the face of the man upon whom he had trampled. That is, it was the face of the fumie image, not the face that he envisioned when he first came to Japan, the face of the Christ from Europe. So this survey shows us that as his understanding of faith and suffering changes, as Rodriguez more and more shares in the suffering of Christ, you could say, his image of Christ changes to one that in a way is a lot more human and is a lot more compassionate to Rodriguez's own circumstances.